Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. Today, we have a wonderful author with us. She is the author of Watching Sarah Rise, and I just have so much to say about this book. I couldn't put it down. And now I need to preface that I know there's a lot of people out there that like to read it with a physical book. I actually listened to it on Audible, and it was magical. It was essentially about a mum who was so determined to help her child so that she could then raise her in a very typical world. And that's not always easy. So she utilized a program called the Sunrise Program, Sun as in SON, Sun. And it's over in the States. And I definitely know that I've heard about the program myself. But, if you haven't heard about it, feel free to obviously go and check it out. But it's through this program that Jennifer was able to really make the biggest shifts for her daughter, Sarah. And this episode is going to be full of so many gems. So feel free to take your notebook and pen, because I think you're going to be really interested in hearing what Jennifer has to say. But Jennifer, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. For those obviously who don't know about the Sunrise Program, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I guess I want to start by saying it's now being called Do Autism Differently, but it's something that parents can get trained in at the Autism Treatment Center of America. And when I trained in 2011, parents had to go in person because we didn't have Zoom at that time that I knew of. Thanks to the pandemic, now parents can train online, both in like live classes or sometimes going through material at their own pace. In a nutshell, the Sunrise Program is for parents to help their kids connect socially, excuse me, whether they have autism or a sudden catch in their throat. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Take your time, drink some water.
So it can be challenges, lots of variants of special needs. Sometimes it's used to help with feeding challenges, which Sarah had. But mainly it started by helping a son, Ron Kaufman, who was diagnosed as being severely autistic. People thought his parents should put him in an institution. His parents decided not to. His parents were Barry Neal Kaufman and Samaria Light Kaufman. Samaria wrote the foreword to my book. And they started working with him one-on-one in their bathroom. And they trained volunteers, and they did not stop his repetitive behaviors. They joined them. That was their doorway to connect with him. They wanted him to know that he was loved. And after 3 years of week one-on-one loving attention, following his lead, not forcing connection, but always offering their presence if he wanted to connect, he really transformed and was able to go off to mainstream school, interact with people easily. So then other parents started hearing about this, in part because Barry Neal Kaufman wrote a book called Sunrise, which I read in college and thought, wow, this is amazing. I almost wish that I would be able to run a Sunrise program at some point, because I was so moved by how Barris and Samaria worked on their own selves to be loving and open and not have judgments, not judge Ron as being bad or wrong or messed up in any way, but just to be like, oh, he's our son and we love him. And I thought that was amazing. Same with his transformation. Amazing. Then we fast forward to me having Sarah, and I actually did not turn to it right away when I knew she had special needs, even when we were dealing with feeding issues, because I was in survival mode. And I knew to run a Sunrise program could be intense because it's parent run, and you either do lifestyle changes or you create a designated room in your house and you train volunteers, which you have to find, and you work one-on-one with your kid. And that's a big undertaking. But when Sarah was 4 and she still wasn't talking and her baby sister had come along, that was when I decided, okay, we need to do something more. Like, she's walking, she can sign for things, but the language still isn't coming. And And some people were starting to feel like maybe her eye contact and connection were going away a little bit. And so I had my mom come up with me to Massachusetts, where the Autism Treatment Center of America is, so that she could take care of Amy, Sarah's younger sister, because Amy was a baby. And you don't take your kids with you for the training, but I couldn't be far away. I was still nursing. And then Sarah was at home with Carl, my husband, and his sister Sonia flew across the country from Seattle to Pennsylvania. For those of you listening, I'm in the United States, so it is Wednesday evening for me, even though it's Thursday evening for some, or Thursday morning for some of you. So I went up for a week of training and I learned how to run a program, how to see like, when is Sarah available to connect? When is she not? And it was so obvious once they said it, but I had not been reading Sarah's signals about that and would maybe try to connect when she wasn't ready, try to teach her something when she wasn't ready. And I learned how to find volunteers, how to train them, how to set up a room. And we took it from there for 5 years, and she transformed also, not to the degree that Ron transformed, but it was her language started exploding basically right away as soon as I got back and started asking for it differently.
I love that. It's it's funny. We were supposed to, my mum and I were supposed to go to a talk run by Ron in Melbourne, and it was literally we're booked in, and then and so we couldn't do it. And obviously wasn't really a thing at the beginning of lockdowns, and so no one really knew what to do. So they basically refunded our money, and that was it. And I was like, oh, okay. And again, we were going into survival mode of trying to deal with lockdowns. But I wish that I had have gone to the talk, and I wish you had have written this book earlier, because it would have been so helpful. I know for so many other parents as well, because sometimes it's hard to know how to connect with your child, especially if they're minimally speaking or non-speaking, and you just don't know what to do or how to engage with them. And the book is an excellent way. Actually, the best part about the book I found was you explaining the games that you were using and how you were using the games to interact with her, because I was like, oh, that's such a good idea. Like, I wish, we could have done that. And sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I should do it now. Like, even though my son is older, is it, and that's another question I should ask you. Do they usually do the Sunrise program with children who are 10 years plus?
All ages. I'm not sure what the youngest is, although I feel like I have a memory of the one kid I heard about who had feeding issues being a baby. And all the way up through, I've heard of it being done with adults who are like in their 30s who talk for the first time. There's no guarantee that someone will talk if they're nonverbal using the Sunrise program, but I know a lot of families for whom that's been true. And I know some where it hasn't been true and they've needed to figure out other ways for their kids to communicate.
Yeah,
But Ron actually, sorry. Ron has a company now with Kate Wild, and it's called the Safe to Connect approach. And they also offer support to parents for how to connect in a loving and supportive way for kids with autism or adults with autism.
So for everyone listening or watching, I will make sure that I get all of these links from Jennifer, and then I will post them in my socials afterwards, and they'll also be on the YouTube show notes as well. So don't worry about writing them down if you don't have a chance. I wanted to read a quote from the book, if that's okay. So, I hadn't realized emotional bricks around with me until I dropped them. So much guilt and responsibility fell from my soul. I had been feeling guilty for Sarah's condition as if it were my fault. Even though logic said it was just a fluke of a chromosomal abnormality, I thought if only I had been different in some way and when trying to get pregnant, or if only I had worked with Sarah more in the first few years, then she wouldn't have faced the challenges that she did. I think that's so beautiful. There's a lot of the mindset around parents raising autistic children in the beginning and how they very much feel like it's their fault. And I will definitely say that, hand on heart, I have definitely had those feelings of grief and overwhelm and stress, and thinking if I, whatever, didn't sit so close to the computer, maybe I worked too hard, maybe I ate the wrong thing, and because you're trying to rack your brain as to what it is, because then you can just be angry at that one thing that you can put all the blame. It was that thing that caused the issue. But regardless, even if it was something that did cause it or didn't cause it, this is the reality. We are here and we need to do the best that we can to support our children. And you can't go back into the past. You can't change the past, even if you knew what to change. We've got to just make sure that we're doing the best for our babies now so that they can live the best quality of life that they have. And I think that that is so profound in terms of parents being able to raise children with a mindset that they are so wonderful and they're not broken. No one is broken. I will say this 100 times over. No one is broken. Everyone is beautiful and in their own right, and they are going to be celebrated in their own way, and they will progress in their own time. And I love that you show that so beautifully and so eloquently through the book. Okay, so next question. How did you tailor it to the Sunrise program, to your family and to Sarah? Because it sounds like quite a lot. Like you're saying, in the book, you talk about creating a specific room for Sarah for the Sunrise program. But for those who haven't read the book, can you just share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I will also say a lot of families who run Sunrise programs do make a room because it makes it easier for the kid to focus and the grown-up to focus. I needed to be in there away from my phone, away from the mail, the dishes, whatever I needed to make for dinner, anything like that. And so we were actually in the process of moving to a new house when all of this happened, and in part driven by the knowledge that we did want to have a room that we could set aside. So we had the advantage of coming into a house and saying, oh, well, this will be the room that will be the Sarah Rise room. And we called it Sarah Rise because, coupling Sarah's name with Sunrise. And it had a shelf that she couldn't reach, and a shelf in the closet. Actually, at first we just had the shelf in the closet. Then later we added one on the wall. The idea is to have the toys out of reach so that the kid has to communicate or go through the adult. And the adult is going to be as user-friendly as possible, ready to grab whatever, guess at it as many times as is necessary, celebrate all the attempts to communicate, but still that there has to be like this go-between. But keeping the toys minimal, no electronics, nothing on the walls, until at one point we put a whiteboard, and sometimes people have a mirror. We had a freestanding mirror that could be moved around so that I could be facing the mirror and Sarah could be on my lap and we could still make eye contact with each other. And the whiteboard for drawing, we often would draw whatever she wanted to have that we didn't have, or we'd make it out of Play-Doh. And then I would try to have two of something, like two scarves or at least two containers of Play-Doh, or enough markers if she wanted to be playing with the markers in a way that wasn't drawing, that I could too, so that if she was doing something repetitive, I could join that behavior, meaning it might look from the outside like I was copying, but I was actually trying to be like, oh, what's fun about this? What is really fun about putting plastic candles in between my toes, like she was doing, and that I could be set up near her, so that she could easily look at me, but I would just be doing my thing until she noticed. And then I could say, oh, candle, and hold it up next to my mouth so that she could make that connection and see if she was most interested in the candle. Well, then she's taking in my mouth at the same time as I'm saying the word candle.
I love that. And I totally agree with you about the distractions. It's more the distraction for the adult. I find it very difficult to do that learning when there's so many distractions in the house. And I think that's hard even with homeschooling, because we obviously would do it in the on the kitchen table. And it's just like there's stuff everywhere, and your phone, and you can see the dishes, and there's got to be like stuff put away, and it's just so hard to keep that focus. So I really applaud the fact that you had the separate room, because I think that is a marvelous, marvelous thing. Because let's be honest, we're being distracted 24/7 these days, and it's very hard to stay on focus and on task. Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before I read out another chapter, or not chapter, but a part of the book?
I think just that idea of having the room without distraction is because if you're joining and doing something repetitive because your kid's not ready to connect with you, oh my goodness, the pull to be like, oh, well, they're not paying attention to me, so I'm just going to go wash the dishes would be so strong. But instead, it was like, no, I am in this room for 2 hours, was my usual time to be with her, and I'm not leaving. And I'm going to be as present as I possibly can so that anytime she's ready, I am there.
And I know I feel like I audibly heard a lot of parents go, oh, 2 hours in a room. Like, I understand. But when you're so engaged, I feel like the time flies, because when you are engaged and you're having so much fun and you're connecting with your child, it doesn't feel like it's a drain to be in that room because you're so connected with them. And not to mention that, like, absolutely, I'm sure that there were times where you were exhausted. I'm sure there were times where you're like, I just don't know if I've got enough energy to go into this room. But then I look at, and no shade to speech and OT, but you look at it going into a therapy session, and it goes for 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And although that's great, they're not always engaged in that time frame. And I often say with therapists, like, my son just can't like switch it on and go into a therapy session and be like, okay, I'm on focus, like, let's go. So having 2 hours to be able to learn from you and from someone who feels so safe is so imperative, because she knew she could be with you. She knew who you were, and she felt like she could connect in a way that made sense to her. And I think that is so nice, because sometimes parents, and again, I'm putting myself at the forefront, is that we feel like we don't have the training. We feel like we don't know what we're doing. We feel like, what's the point in trying this? Because, like you just said, they're distracted. So, they want to go and do something else. And so that we build this story up around why we don't want to do it. And then it's all just easier to just not do it at all. And I have, like I said, I always put myself at the forefront, because this has happened multiple times where I'm like, damn, I did it again, and catching yourself in it. So I'm not far from perfect, that's for sure.
I'm also far from perfect.
No, I don't think there is a person on this planet who is raising a child with additional needs, or who is neurodivergent, who is saying, like, I've got it all perfect and I've got it all down pat and I know exactly what they're doing. There are definitely some people out there that are coping way better than others. But that comes back down to how, as a person, as a mum, how are you showing up for yourself? So I'm going to read a part from chapter 15. Sarah recently turned 7, and I spent a few days in February trying to wrap my head around the idea that might help me stay more present with myself and with Sarah Rye's program. I have struggled my whole life with having high expectations of myself and being disappointed when I don't meet my own goals for any given day or task. My new idea was very simple and also profound. Well, at least I thought so. When the day was done and I noticed how much I did or did not do, maybe I could see that as information only. Unmet goals and undone tasks didn't have to be judged harshly. If I could accept Sarah's speed of learning and doing, perhaps I could accept my own. This would certainly feel better than being the jockey with a crop on my own rump. In support of being at peace with what I had done, rather than always thinking I should have done more, I received these affirming words from my stepmom. What if you knew about the extraordinary miracle that has already happened, that many of them have been happening and more are continuing to happen? That what Sarah had already achieved in her short life is a miracle. Would you feel a huge sigh? A sense of, I'm good at this? Could you sit back, relax, and calmly soak in the radiance of success? I ask this because Sarah's progress does seem like a miracle. We have no benchmark that is appropriate for Sarah. Thus, one could say she is behind the typical child, or another perspective is that she is growing her skills by extraordinary Sarah leaps and extraordinary Sarah bounds at fantastic Sarah speed. Your stepmom has some serious wisdom right there. She understands that. And of course, like, as most of us, we want things to happen straight away. We want them to be like, why isn't this child picking it up as fast as their typical peers? Why is this not working? Why is it so hard? But if we look at all the miracles that they've already achieved going forward, would you sit back and be like, holy moly, this was huge. The fact that they did X, Y, and Z And it's taken us 6 months to even get here. And I think we're so quick to jump over the good stuff. We're so quick to jump over the blessings, but we're so focused on the negative stuff. And I think we're hardwired to focus on the negative stuff. But if we can change that and we can focus more on the positive stuff, it is truly mind-blowing to see these little people with so many challenges just literally shine every single day. And you just want to hug your kids a little bit tighter and be like, bro, you are amazing. You're amazing. And I want parents to feel that. Please take on this energy that I'm giving to you right now, because your children are incredible beings. They are here to support you and not support you. You're there to support them, but they will teach you so much in ways that you cannot comprehend. You cannot even think that this is even possible. And this book definitely, as you can see, it's touched my heart. I loved every minute of this book. So it's definitely something I will recommend for future families, that's for sure. So we talk in the book around having volunteers come into the room, because obviously you weren't doing it yourself all the time. You were obviously doing certain parts, but you were having volunteers. So can you just tell the listeners how you were finding these volunteers?
Yeah, I started by sending an email out to friends and acquaintances and family members, both largely in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but also people I knew elsewhere, because you never know who knows somebody. And I said, this is what the Sunrise program is. This is, you probably already know that Sarah's a little unique, and this is what we're going to do. And we can want the world for her, but not need her to change, to love her completely, not need her to change at all. And I said, I'm looking for volunteers to play with Sarah, and I'll train you, or be with Amy, and then I can be with Sarah, or you can cook me dinner. And I had volunteers for all of those. And then I also specifically reached out to some people who were connected to drama departments in local colleges. And I said, can you send this email to your students? Because I wanted students who were comfortable being silly. I only got one person from that, but he was so enthusiastic about it. Then he told all of his friends, and many of them came and joined the program. And then I had a high school student I found through the Friendship Circle, which is a group that connects neurotypical teens with kids with special needs for like a play date every week. And I reached out and I said, well, this is what I'm doing. Do you have anyone who might be interested in something a little different? And I got one person, and then he loved it so much, he gave a presentation to his high school class, and one of his friends reached out and got in touch with me. And one of my friends, I'm an Alexander Technique teacher, and one of my friends from that started reading my weekly updates that I started writing just to friends and family once I was working with Sarah, and read it out loud on the phone to her friend every week. And then her friend reached out and was like, hey, can I be a part of this? So it started with me just directly asking for help, but casting a really wide net. And then it just grew largely by word of mouth. And then I also advertised in some places where people could go if they were looking to volunteer in something.
Okay, so we need to unpack this a bit more, because the crazy protective mama bear in me has questions. So obviously, I don't know, can't say over in the States, but over here there's been a lot of talk and a lot of stuff in the news around people being taken off to jail because they've been inappropriate with younger children, or being, or special needs kids. How did you qualify these volunteers to make sure that they weren't going to take advantage of Sarah? And how did you make sure that they were trustworthy and that they had her best interest at heart?
I just really trusted my intuition, which had been honed over years of being a massage therapist in private practice and occasionally getting inappropriate clients. And once I decided for myself with that, this is way before having kids, I was like, I am never taking someone where I have the tiny little whispers going off in my head of like, something's not right. Even if I couldn't put my finger on it, I decided to always trust myself and not book that person. And I never got another inappropriate client once I made that decision. The other thing is a lot of these people I knew or I had gotten through word of mouth. And true, a lot I didn't know ahead of time, but the training involved me watching them. And even once they were fully trained, I always watched 15 to 30 minutes of their session, and they didn't know when I was going to be watching. But I never even felt the slightest bit of worry of anything. Their energy was so loving and kind and present and creative. And I could tell we would have team meetings once a month and that they were getting just as much from their sessions with Sarah as she was getting, which was hard for me to accept because it's like, you really want to come bring your loving attention and your time every week to us? Really? But yes, they did. And that was amazing.
It makes me get emotional because I think that there's still goodness in this humanity, right? There are still people out there who, you know, oh God, I don't want to cry. You know, it's this idea that they will give up their time and not be paid for this, right? They're doing it out of the selflessness, the goodness out of their heart to impact another person's life. And to know that there are people out there like that is truly heartwarming because this journey can feel very alone and it can feel very like you are doing it alone all the time and that there's no one there to really support you. So the fact that these people were there is incredible. And I loved them. Sonia, we should do a massive shout out to Sonia. Sonia is Jennifer's sister-in-law and she was the jam, but I'm not going to tell you because you need to read the book. But she is incredible. I wish I had a Sonia. I tell you, because Sonia is like in the whole saying, not everyone wears capes. I think Sonia needs a cape. So do you, my friend Jennifer. You need a cape too. So we're talking about you going into this room 2 hours. Was it 2 hours every day?
Well, I will also say, especially with new volunteers, I would start them at like 15 minutes and then we'd talk, and then another 15 minutes, and then we'd talk, and then they'd be done for the day. And I myself started slow and built up to the 2 hours. Occasionally I did 3-hour sessions, but usually 2. Sometimes I would do 2 of those in one day, but that was rare. Usually it would just be 2 hours a day for me. And then once we had a ton of volunteers, I wasn't always going in the room every day. And I wouldn't on the weekends. Usually that would be when Carl would do his time with her because he was working a full-time job regularly. I forget what the question was when you started, why I started talking about the time.
In terms of taking care of yourself, outside of the volunteers, like we were saying that you were doing 2 hours a day. Like, how are you looking after yourself? You've got a young child. You've also got Sarah who has needs, who needs to be taken care of. You've got volunteers to come in. You know, you're still cooking and you're still cleaning. You're still running a household, and you're working as a massage therapist. Like, how are you looking after yourself? How are you coping? Because that sounds like a pretty full plate.
It was a full plate, and I think training the volunteers, that certainly took time, but I also then knew that Sarah was getting all this amazing input even if I wasn't there, so I felt more freed to give my good attention to Amy when I had the time, or she could go with me to the grocery store or whatever. I did decide I needed a full-time helper, and Sonia, my sister-in-law, became that full-time helper. And sometimes I would have a volunteer with Amy and a volunteer with Sarah, or Sonia would be with Amy and a volunteer would be with Sarah, and that's when I would go see a client. Or I could have a volunteer with Sarah and Sonia and I would sort of be trading off who is washing dishes, who's doing food prep, who's with Amy. Like, it really was like having a second self to have Sonia there with me. Even with that, though, I will say I was doing a lot, and sometimes I would be very tired, and it was also still quite challenging and emotional with the times that Sarah and I would clash over, like, you know, if it was time to wash her favorite pair of pants and she would have a meltdown for an hour, and I did not handle that the best, and sometimes that was in the middle of the night, and I really didn't handle it the best then. So the things I did to support me were having conversations with someone from the Autism Treatment Center of America. I now actually continue to get support as a parent from Autism Optimum International, which is another group. But it's a group of families who have all done sunrise programs. And we talk with a facilitator, and that is helpful. And I'm a big fan of crying. And sometimes I needed to have my own cry on the kitchen floor, and then I could feel better after that. And talking to my mom, who is just an amazing listener and support. And we realized when I sort of hit a low at one point in the middle of running the program that I needed to talk to her, or it was just an idea of like, hey, let's try talking every day. And that made a difference. It could be 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever I had time for. She doesn't mind if we're talking and Sarah is screaming. And actually, that will help me listen to Sarah better because I feel like someone else is with me, even if no one else is in the house. And I can talk about like the frustration of how someone bagged my groceries, or I could talk about my parenting concerns, or whatever it is, to have that that time that was actually just focused on me. Like I think of it as my Jenny Rise time. And then I got Alexander technique lessons to continue. I feel like that's always going to help me be more centered in myself. I got massages and other kinds of body work, and going to see my clients and to teach, to like switch gears and not be in parent mode. That was helpful, to be like, I am going to go and tune into myself and tune into this other person's body, and we're going to listen to nice music. And when we're done, they're going to thank me and say I was amazing. Because, that was not always coming from the kids, even though I know that they loved me and still do love me dearly. But parenting is a different dynamic sometimes.
Oh, 100% there. Just for everyone listening, because they may not know what the Alexander technique is, can you just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, it is. Sometimes people call it body work. I feel like it is a way of working with yourself or someone else through the body, but it's also really working with your mind. It's how you interface with your world. And a lot of times it gets used to help actors and musicians use themselves better. And it's not just posture, although it's often associated with that, but it's like posture in action. Or I mostly helped massage therapists because everyone wants to hunch over their work and just use their stubby little thumb, instead of knowing that your thumb is connected all the way up to your back, and that connects all the way down to your feet, and really using your whole body. So it's about changing your awareness of your whole self, both your body and how you're put together, and you're noticing your thoughts. Like, are you noticing the whole room around you? Or are you just noticing like, oh, that your neck hurts, and you've sort of actually lost all touch with the rest of your body because you're so focused on the one part of your neck? But if you can come into your full body and just notice yourself all the way down to your toes, notice what you're seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, notice your peripheral vision, notice the whole room around you and the whole floor and the whole house, then all of a sudden, wow, I am like a new person just from those couple seconds of changing how I was thinking.
And do you think that you utilizing and learning that technique helped you with the Sunrise program?
I do, because sometimes I can get so tense around something with Sarah because we have our control battles with each other. And occasionally I can have the wherewithal to be like, okay, well, I can't actually change how I'm feeling right now towards her. But if I notice that my body is all like scrunched up or tight, oh, well, what if I can ask my body to change? And maybe that actually works to help my feelings change. It's the same as sometimes I have to deal with like a gross thing. And I notice like a raccoon got into my garbage last night, and I was dealing with it, and my face was all like, ugh. And I was like, well, what if I fix my face? Which is such a cliche thing to say, but like, what if I let my face relax? Then the task doesn't actually seem quite as gross as when I was having my face, my face was feeling like it was gross to deal with it.
That's so funny. It's true though. Yes, we have to deal with things all the time as parents, so I get that. I'm going to just read one more part about the taking care of yourself. This is from chapter 24. I was not just mad at Sarah's whining and yelling. I think I was also mad at her for her condition, for her delay, for her challenges, for her neurodiversity. Instead of having compassion for her when she had a hard time with transitions, I was angry with her. And this anger was immediately followed by considering myself to be the most horrible, rotten person imaginable for having those feelings. I wanted a break, a time when I was not on call in any way in my own home. I wanted to be at home unneeded so I could deal with piles of stuff or just read my book all day. I wanted a day where half of what I said wasn't met with whining by Sarah or Amy or both. Can you say it again for the people in the back? Like it is. I feel like we are, as parents, as mums, particularly raising, autistic children, that we're always on call 24/7. If you have a child who's waking multiple times during the night or is up, for long periods of time at nighttime, you feel like you're never off and that there always is something to do and always something to get done. And I think that is so overwhelming and you feel like you can never be at peace even in your own home. And I think that changing that mindset, we can really look at something so differently. I often say to clients, if you are feeling like that, we need to schedule in some rest time. Like literally, you need to put it in your calendar, like not just like a nice to do, but if you said that you need to go for a walk, I want you to physically write it in your calendar so that someone has that child or if the child is taken care of and that you can go for that walk. So that, because we know that we are the most important people of these houses. We love men, we love our dads, we love them. But I tell you, us mums, we are the captain of these ships. And if we are not looking after ourselves, we will most certainly go down into the deep. And it's very hard to get out of that hole once you're in it. So is there anything that you wanted to share with that?
Yeah, it's actually a newer realization, which again, so obvious once I realized it, but it took me forever to come to it, that because people always say stuff like, oh, take care of yourself first, put your oxygen mask on first, blah, blah, blah. But was I really getting it? I'm still working on it to really understand it. But when I flipped it, I was like, oh, well, as a massage therapist, I really got it that if I used the Alexander technique to really take care of me, so I was not physically hurting myself, and it didn't feel like hard work to give a massage. I was mentally really working to stay present and remind myself of things. But at first I felt like it was cheating. I was like, I have to feel like I'm working to get money for giving a massage. But then I really got it that I gave a better massage when I really was taking care of myself and when it felt easy. And so now when I suddenly was like, oh, wait, you mean the same might apply to parenting? I might actually be much better at it if I'm taking care of myself first. What? So still working on learning that lesson, but and this part is in my book. There was a time where I really decided, I was like, I am really going to prioritize myself and I'm just going to feel like I'm on vacation and read. And then the kids started giving me all this extra love. And I was like, what just happened here? And I think that they read my energy and were giving me back more of the same.
I totally agree with you on that. Like kids are so intuitive, right? Especially neurodivergent children. I'm sure that they're like mind readers. They know what's going on in our brains. And if you are coming to the table with light and fluffy and feeling good, they're going to absolutely respond to that. But if you're coming to the table like angry and everything is hard and you're just fed up and frustrated, they're picking up on that and they're going to give you more of that back, right? And that's not what we want. We want the light and fluffy from them. So we need to be light and fluffy. And it's definitely a hard thing to do. It's not easy, that's for sure. So obviously having a younger sibling, you had Amy as Sarah's sister. How did you manage raising both girls and Sarah having, so many needs, and then Amy obviously has needs as well. Like how did you manage both of those situations?
I feel like it was in many ways easier because of running the Sarah Vise program, because then I had all these extra hands around. And I think without that, all of the attention would have gone to Sarah anyway, and Amy would not have gotten attention. Whereas this way, she was getting a lot of good one-on-one attention, or some of the volunteers who came to be with her brought their young kids. So she got a play date. And then also she was growing up in this household that was filled with creativity of like, if we don't have the thing, we'll draw it. And so now she is the one, if Sarah wants a thing and we don't have it, she whips out the paper and starts drawing it. And she has a space for people to be who they are that I don't think we could have taught other than having her like marinate in that environment. And I certainly worried about it sometimes, being like, oh, we're not having them together as much, or I'm not focusing on her as much. But I really think that actually I had more free attention for her because of all the extra help. And then the transition from the early days when she was very clearly the youngest to now when she is basically the older sister. I say she's both older and younger, and Sarah is both older and younger. That technically Sarah is the older one, but Amy is the one who can be left alone in the house or in charge and be able to problem solve a little more flexibly than Sarah can at this point. And that transition happened really seamlessly, and we didn't work at it. It just sort of happened. And Amy is also now the taller than Sarah. She's taller than I am. And so often gets mistaken for being the older sister because people so often go by height and they think Sarah's younger than she is when actually she's 18.
And so for the listeners, how old was Amy and Sarah when you were first writing the book, and now how old are they now?
Well, I'll start with, so Sarah was 4.5 and Amy was half when I started the Sunrise program or the Sarah Rise program. And then it was in the pandemic shutdown that I started writing the book. So let's see, that would have been, Sarah would have been 13 and Amy would have been 9 when I started writing the book. And now Amy's 14 and Sarah's 18.
Gosh, how the
and I'm 48.
Looking good for 48. It's hard. The years go fast, and you don't realize it until you have that reflection around what's happening. So, guys, if this episode has resonated with you, I really urge you to go out and buy the book. You can get the book from Amazon. It is, and if you don't want to buy the physical book, like you can do like me and hear it on Audible, it's truly something that you will take so many gems from it, because there's so much wisdom in those pages. And there's so many times that I was reading it and going, yes, like I know exactly how Jennifer's feeling, because that's exactly how I felt before in the past, or like crying and being like, yeah, I feel the pain. Like I know what you're going through, that it hurts and it's hard. So it's a beautiful book. Watching Sarah Rise is the title. Jennifer, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we do one more thing?
Yeah, back to the idea of taking care of yourself. I think one thing that can seem really hard and like the opposite of what a person needs is that if there are hard feelings and you think you'll be dragged down by them, or they're too ugly to even admit to yourself, you actually, at least for me, the best thing is to face into it, let myself feel those terrible, awful feelings, because then I can move on and then they're gone. As opposed to if I'm like, no, I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel it. And then I'm like towing them along with me. So if I just turn, and sometimes I just need like a 2-minute cry, and then I feel better. And also in terms of the kids reading our energy, Sarah totally, I think she can smell fear like a dog, but also she's very kind. If I am having a hard time and tell her I'm sad, or she'll ask, why are you sad? I don't try to hide it from her. I tell her. And then she is often coming over to like draw a card for me or give me kisses and hugs, or we say vitamin S and vitamin A from the 2 girls. And so that maybe just, and I have to keep learning this myself, to not be scared of your own feelings.
Yes, very much so. And the more you push them away, the more they hunt you down, those feelings. Like just face them head on and accept them and move through them as best you can. And this idea of like trying to push them down or not letting the tears come is almost going to do more harm rather than actually just feeling the feelings and moving through it. Now, where can people find you on Instagram and Facebook?
Jennifer Celeste Briggs, author. And then I also have a website, watchingsarahrise.com.
Amazing. Now, I know we spoke before and you said that you have a freebie to share with the audience. Can you please share that with us now?
Yeah, if anyone gets the book because of listening here and then contacts me via my website and says that, then I can send a signed book plate if they give me their address and I can mail it. I'm also happy to share if people would like one of the recipes, if they email me and say that they heard about me here, then I can send them a recipe just
I
over
will
email.
definitely be taking those recipes. Thank you. And just so for the Aussies, because I know the Aussies do not know what a book plate is, can you tell them what that is? Because we have no idea.
Yeah. It's just a nice sticker where I can write something and sign it. So it's as if you came to a book signing, but you didn't actually have to come to the US.
Because that's just a wee bit of travel, just a little bit. Before we head off, I just wanted to ask you one question. What is one piece of advice that you would give to a parent who's just starting out on this journey?
I think to look around at the different therapies that are out there before feeling like you have to decide on one, because insurance and what's often talked about, insurance will pay for applied behavior analysis or ABA therapy. And there are so many other things out there. And I think it's kind of like shopping for a school for your kid or a house. And I didn't know that at the beginning with some things, but then it's like, oh, you find the thing that feels right to you and the thing that makes sense for you and your family. And if it's the Sunrise program, well, you get to make it be about your kid and your family, and just to trust yourself and not feel like you have to do everything and not feel like you have to do everything perfectly.
Yes, that idea of perfection needs to go in the garbage, because what you think is perfection is different to me, to what I think is perfection. So we're never ever going to hit it. And sometimes it's just easier to leave it at the door. Jennifer, thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure chatting with you and sharing your amazing book. And I hope that everyone goes out there and purchases a copy. I will be popping in the links after we jump off, and we can go from there.
Thank you
See you
so
later,
much.
Jennifer.